Welcome to a new episode of Science in Context. I'm Ryan, and today I'm joined by Professor Neil Ferguson to talk about the ongoing outbreak of bird flu. Neil, what's the situation with the current outbreak of avian flu, and why is it having such an impact?
Well, when we talk about avian flu, what we're talking about technically is highly pathogenic H5N1, which originated in Asia, all the way back in 1997 and gradually became endemic in bird populations there. It hasn't been in Europe until quite recently. We started to get occasional incursions 2 or 3 years ago. But what we saw last year was a significant uptick, and we've seen another really quite major growth in the number of cases of bird flu. Now, this is a virus which circulates in basically water birds, seabirds, ducks, geese, swans, and there's been a very large epidemic this year in wild bird populations spanning many species. People may have heard of die-offs of seabird colonies. Unfortunately, the virus then spills over occasionally into poultry flocks. So when you hear cases reported, typically that's an entire farm which has been affected, causes major die-offs of poultry. And of course, they can't be used for human consumption. So the farms are then culled out, and so has a big economic impact. We've had more cases since October this year, just in 2 months, than we had in the whole of last year, unfortunately. So it's quite a serious situation for the farming industry.
And what do we know about the current risks to human health?
So originally, the original H5N1 viruses did pose some risk to human health and had quite a high mortality rate. We've had several hundred cases with H5N1 worldwide. Something over half of those cases died, human cases. Now the virus, the H5N1 lineage as it's called, has evolved a lot in the following 20 years. And the particular subgroup which is causing the outbreak in Europe at the moment is called 2.3.4.4b2, a nice catchy name. Seems to be better adapted to birds, probably explaining why so many more bird species have been affected this year. The outbreak's been much larger in wild birds. Avian influenza viruses have complicated genetics, and this virus has taken some bits of the virus from gull viruses, for instance. It seems, though, this has made it less able to infect people. There's extensive testing of people who come into contact with infected birds, and we've had only across Europe in the last year or so, only a handful of potential infections, none highly symptomatic, and it's possible even some of those infections are not real infections, but virus being detected in swabs because people have been exposed to the virus. So we can't be complacent, but there's not an immediate risk to human health.
And what's been done to address the outbreak in the UK?
So unfortunately, we can't really control the spread of the virus in wild bird populations. The ecology is very complicated. There's no way of capturing and vaccinating them. So the focus is twofold at the moment. One is trying to mitigate the spillover infection into poultry flocks, and that's through, first of all, better biosecurity. So you'll be aware that free-range birds now have to be housed, but most poultry in this country is produced in very intensive, high-density facilities, and they're fairly sealed anyhow, but just do better at biosecurity. Longer term, a number of European countries, including the UK, are evaluating the use of vaccination of poultry flocks, which has been extensively used in China and Asia, but not in Europe at the moment. So that will require some time. There are economic and trade issues associated with it, plus we need to make sure it actually works, and so some scientific evaluation will be necessary. On the human health side, there's now intensified surveillance around people coming into contact with the virus and more systematic scientific studies, so we can better quantify exactly what, if any, risk there is to human health.
Neil, thank you for your time.
Thank you.